Welcome to the Jerry Bovino Show. And now, here's Jerry.
Jerry Bovino. We're back with the Bootsy Bellow boy, Andrew Sandler. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's rare that I have such a charming, good-looking, and highly intelligent young man to come on, and he was very generous because he's like a rock star in this town. And so, Andrew, let's put you in a frame of reference. We're going to tell today nightclub secrets. Okay, you know the secrets. And put your ear to the TV right now because you're going to learn them. Give us a little bit about your background, Andrew.
Originally from New York City. I'm 39. We moved out of New York when I was 10 to Greenwich. When I was 13 to Arizona, boarding school in New Hampshire, college in Boston. Couldn't stand Boston. Finished up at University of Arizona. Moved to Scottsdale, started a telecommunications company. I was reselling telecom services.
All right, well, let's hold that for a second. Let's go back to Boston. What
Sure.
didn't you like about Boston?
Without getting myself in too much trouble here, I just felt that anyone who gets up in the morning and base their entire daily disposition on how their sports teams did the night before wasn't the place for me.
And they're very big on the Red Sox and
the Patriots, and I just wasn't integrating well.
You weren't feeling it.
I wasn't feeling it.
Which school were you at?
I was at Northeastern, and I loved the school.
I actually applied to that school because they have a unique
Program.
business model where you actually are working during, so you get some real life experience, which I think is probably a great idea.
Yeah, the co-op program was wonderful. I participated for the first year.
But you lived in New York and then Greenwich.
Yeah.
So your family was successful. What kind of business was your family in?
My dad came from the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts, poor farm boy.
Really? Your dad was a poor farm boy?
Yeah,
huh? And
poor
such a
Jewish
nice guy.
farm boy.
Yeah. What are the odds of that?
It happens. He graduated from BU, went to Vietnam, Special Forces in Vietnam.
Wow.
Came back, had $2,000 in his pocket. Started a company in New York where every truck that went across state lines, or I think 5 different Canadian provinces, they had to be weighed and then the permits had to be printed out. And he was the one who provided those permits.
I love it when people have like there's not one person today watching who had any idea you could make money off permits on trucks.
No.
Right? I love those little niche businesses. And usually the people who have them are highly successful.
He was really successful. He started with his sister. He sold it in '89. But then we got out of the city right before Giuliani cleaned it up. Made it to Connecticut and then off to Arizona, where he purchased a few more companies, grew those, and sold those.
Good for him. So what year did your family move to Aspen?
So they've been taking I've got a twin brother. They've been taking us here since 1982 when we were 3.
Oh, you're identical twins?
Fraternal twins.
Fraternal twins.
Fraternal twins. And a great story. My dad used to take a ski trip every year. Came out here in '82, got off the plane, walked around town, got back on the plane, went and got my mother, said, you have to see this town. They came back, fell in love with it, bought a couple fractionals at the Prospector, and then finally purchased a house in '97 and moved here.
Yeah, it's a great story of, and you know why it's good, Andrew, is because it's emblematic of how we all got here. I always tell the story that I was, in 1972, I was working in the Vietnam War in the public health service taking care of gonorrhea in merchant seamen for $11,000 a year. And one of the doctors who I worked with came back to the clinic, said, I just was in this place, Aspen. You got to go to this place, Aspen. I didn't know Aspen. I grew up in Queens. You know, I got out here and I knew, it's like in the John Denver song where he says he was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place he'd never been before. And that was me. I knew this was my place. So
yeah, everyone's got a story like that.
Everyone's got a story.
Sure.
Okay, so now you transferred from Boston to Arizona. Why Arizona? What was the hook?
You know, I really considered it the Harvard of the West. And the girls are beautiful. The campus was gorgeous. I just kind of wanted, more of a college environment.
Is that in Tempe, the University of Arizona?
No, it was in Tucson. So ASU was in Tempe.
Oh, ASU is in
was
Tempe. I got it.
U of A, referred to as Arizona, was in Tucson.
And did you learn? Here's something interesting. You went to boarding school, so let's go back to that for a second. Because my son David went to just like a public school because we lived in a place where there was a good public school. So when he went to college, all the kids had gone to boarding school at these elite Eastern colleges. And I said, David, do you feel like out of sorts because you didn't go to one of these fancy boarding schools. He said, Dad, the only thing they learn at those boarding schools is how to get the best drugs. So is that true or not?
It wasn't for me. There was definitely kids smoking weed all the time, but it was just a great experience. It was co-ed, just a healthy environment to be in. I think when we moved to Arizona, the school system wasn't too great out there, and growing up in New England, it was more of a rite of passage to go to boarding school than anything. But it was the best 4 years. It was more fun than college, honestly.
Yeah,
in fact, I just had my 20-year high school reunion a couple months ago, which was really exciting.
Did a lot of people go?
A lot of people did go, and it's funny to see where people are 20 years later versus then, and how they look, and what they've accomplished, and how family-oriented they've become. So it was a really pleasant experience.
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon. And the other thing that's interesting is you went through a tragedy where your dad died. Tell our viewers what that experience was like.
I had just returned from Cabo. It was November 18th, and we dropped my ex-girlfriend off at the time, went and made dinner at the house, watched our favorite show, Sons of Anarchy, and had a conversation. He asked if I wanted to see a movie, which I'd already seen. So I went and saw a different one, but it was just one of those nights. I think I was backing out of the driveway, and he came up and looked at me and said something, and was walking back into the house and just turned around and kind of peered through me like he was never going to see me again. And I saw a movie, got out, he had sent me a text about something. Then around 4:19 in the morning, the cops called about 3 times. I finally answered. I was like, what? I didn't know it was the police, and they're like, are you Andrew Sandler? We need you to return to the house, which was 3 miles away. And you just kind of knew, based on the phone call and how they were speaking to me, that.
And what happened? What was the?
He was driving on the 51 highway that cuts through Phoenix and Scottsdale, and he was killed on his motorcycle. Something catastrophic happened with the bike, and he hit the wall under one of the underpasses.
Horrible story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your mom, Elaine, who's brilliant, by the way. Your mom is she's one of the most brilliant people that I know. And the interesting thing about Elaine, who lives here in Aspen with us, she is a beautiful writer, but her writing is so erudite, and her vocabulary and the way she frames her thoughts is amazing. So talk a little bit about your mom.
My mother's one of the most loving people around. But she's a character in town. She's extremely intelligent, very well thought out when she's writing. And yes, the vocabulary is vast, much more vast than mine.
And she has just a beautiful logic to the way she writes. But she is opinionated. What's the name of her? Opinionated but right.
Opinionated but right. Yeah, she's very direct with her feelings and thoughts on many subjects.
Well, here's what we're going to do. You have a little background on Andrew now. Andrew's a very cool guy, because you got to be a cool guy to own a nightclub, right?
I never really even liked nightclubs, and it's funny. I make this joke with my partners in LA. I'm like, if we didn't own these things, we'd never be allowed in them.
That's how I was when I was a kid. I was not cool. I mean, if I could have had a nightclub, I would have been cool. So here's what we're going to do.
All right.
Let's take a short break. Let's recognize the underwriters who generously support us here at Grassroots Television. The first one we're going to recognize is Bootsy Bellows with Andrew. He's going to become a supporter of Grassroots, which we greatly appreciate. And also David Fleischer at Pickett County Dry Goods, who's been a long-term loyal supporter of our station, and Bishop Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. So when we come back, we're going to do Nightclub Secrets. You're going to find out everything that you always wondered about what it's like to own a nightclub, run a nightclub, deal with nightclub's problems. We're coming right back.
Bishop Plumbing and Air Conditioning, serving Aspen and Vail for over 40 years. Shoe covers, name tags, IDs. Let Bishop worry about your heating, plumbing, and air conditioning issues so that you don't have to. Bishop Plumbing and Air Conditioning, 925-8610.
Jerry Bovino. We're back again with Andrew Sandler, the Bootsy Bellows boy. He's going to tell us nightclub secrets. But you never got a chance to tell us about your first business. You started in your parents' basement or something, a bedroom. Was reselling something? What was that?
Yeah, I was. I saved up $15,000. Called up my dad, shared with him a company I'd found where I could resell telecommunication services because he was in the telecom industry. And it was just pure coincidence that he had been speaking to one of his ex-employees who was doing something very similar. So I said, I'm coming home, going to live in my childhood bedroom and work out of the guest bedroom. And just became a cold calling machine. And out of that, started growing sales teams for myself and other companies. And
was it successful?
It was really successful. I was broke for the first 2 years, and then the money started trickling in, and then the more money I started making or more disposable income, I would come up to Aspen more and more and more, and Aspen started just growing on me. But
who'd you sell it to?
I ended up selling to another reseller in the space, and you know the heart of telecom is here in Boulder and Denver, so it was unique having them around, and the name of the company was Aspen Conferencing.
Do you think you have some special skill or inclination at entrepreneurship? Nowadays, like the coolest thing, it used to be that in my generation, people wanted to be a physician or a lawyer. Then they all wanted to start like a hedge fund. And now everybody wants to be in startups. Startups are the cool thing now. Do you think you have you need some special talent for that, or can anybody do it?
You know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My dad had businesses, and he was always very charismatic, and I just was blessed to have his personality and genetic disposition, honestly. And with a couple differences, I used to give speeches to high school kids, and it was always easy for me to get up in front of people. I always enjoyed that. I think one day I said to him, my dad, there's got to be something else I can do here. My personality must lend itself to something a little bit more creative than the constant cold calling, and I was on the trade show circuit and whatnot. And unfortunately, it wasn't until he passed away that we did the first club, which was Escobar, where I really got a taste.
Right, yeah. and you were one of the partners in Escobar.
Yeah, so
which was a successful club in its day, right?
It still is. It still is.
Tell us about Escobar and tell us what was the history there.
You know, I was sitting at La Hosteria. It was 2010 with Shay Stutzman from Stutzman Gerbos and Ryan Chadwick, who owns Gray Lady and Escobar. And Ryan said, guys, do you want to do a bar? I've always wanted to do a nightclub. And I said, I've always wanted to do a nightclub. So we started talking about the history of Aspen, and we went over to look at the old Club Soda, Club Tattoo space, which is still sitting empty right now.
Yes.
And we turned around, and there was Fly Lounge. And I think Ryan...
It was like an airplane, I remember.
Yeah, and it
Fly Lounge
still has a huge airplane look to it. It's become a staple in the community. So I left town for, I think, 2 weeks for my father's gravestone unveiling, and I came back, and Ryan had assembled the team and already spoken to the former owner, and before you knew it, we all wrote checks and we were in business, and it was a blast.
Did you know anything about the nightclub business before you started?
Only one of us knew anything about bars. It was Ian Perry, who's Ryan's partner right now, and we had no idea. I mean, I had some idea that the place was going to be a huge success because we were all locals, and everyone loves locals.
And you would tell, you tell all your friends, and they tell their friends, and then the friends would tell the tourists, because tourists come up to me all the time. Just the other night, I said, go over to Bootsy Bellows, So,
the first night, I think we had about 300 people in there, and that's when we knew we had a problem as well as a success, because there was only 1/7 of us who knew anything about bars. So I was a quick learn, but when I saw that one of the brokest guys in the room and one of the richest guys in the rooms were having the same amount of fun, with each other. I was like, okay, there's something here. And that's kind of when I came up with where I say the 4 vices of life, sex, drugs, liquor, and gambling. Everyone loves one of those. And,
That's why I like Vegas so much, because
Exactly.
everybody in Vegas is doing all the things your mother told you was bad for you.
Sure.
Sex, drugs, liquor, and gambling. There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it rings true for anyone.
And it's always a good business model, right?
It is. And, I like to say we create the fantasy that people subscribe to. And that's why we constantly try and one-up ourselves at Bootsy's every year with, whether it's adding additional lights or a CO2 machine or a fog machine.
What's CO2? See, I don't even know.
CO2 is when compressed air is blown out into the crowd, and it's almost like when you're breathing out in winter and you can see your breath, but it's a lot of it focused on the dance floor, and just gets people revved up.
Interesting. So there are a lot of little nuances to the nightclub business that the average person doesn't know about. And your clubs are positioned as something that I only know, I've heard about it, but in your context of explaining it to me, it's a bottle club. And I don't know exactly, not being a cool kid, I wouldn't know a bottle club from a schmottle club. So explain to our viewers, what is a bottle club?
So when we did Escobar, the first thing I became familiar with was bottle service. And what I had surmised there was that what was Aspen missing? You know, from all of the bars that have been there, you know, between Bentley's to Cooper Street to Shooters, what were we missing? We were missing the New York, LA, Vegas, Miami style bottle club. Upscale bottle club where the clientele would come and spend thousands and thousands of dollars.
And why did they do that? What's your, other than the obvious, because they want to have a good time, but why? What is the appeal of going in that's different from just going into the J bar and getting drunk on a margarita?
There's something about being seen spending thousands of dollars that piques people's interest. There's something about being watched from down below. You know, at Bootsy's we have a tiered table system where tier 1 is on the floor, and then you take 3 steps up, which is about 2 feet, and you're elevated. And
the floor is the best spot.
The second tier seating, the elevated seating is the best spot. And people can stand on top of the booths. You know, the girls come in their outfits and sparklers on the bottles. And it's a whole, you know, it's theater.
It's theater. It's like the old Studio 54 stuff.
Sure.
So, and you know about Studio 54,
absolutely.
Right? Which was totally sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Absolutely.
I mean, people were having sex in the club. I don't want to know about what goes on at Bootsy Bellows.
Neither do I.
I'm sure you've seen some boy kiss a girl somewhere.
It's happened.
So, okay, so now you have an upscale club, and Escobar was also an upscale club.
Sure.
But now you're like a log unit more upscale at Bootsy Bellows. And how do people, like, they want to come down and tell us the whole thing about how the club works. Like, first of all, you usually have some guy with the velvet ropes outside to make it like a bouncer or something, right?
Absolutely.
Explain the function of the bouncer.
Well, let me explain Bootsy Bellows first.
Okay, go ahead.
The brand Bootsy Bellows is out of LA, and it's owned by the H-Wood Group, and I license the Aspen one. And the reason why I do that is the same reason why, you know, Matsu is licensed from Nobu versus a Kenichi or a Maru. When you have the name, the people will come. And beyond that is what they've already created. It's an established brand. There's protocols to be followed. So
you license the name Bootsy Bellows. And what's the origins of that name? It's not one of those things that you immediately say it means something, but do you know anything about the origins, why they choose it?
Yeah, my partner, one of my partners is David Arquette, and his mother was a burlesque dancer in the 60s, and her stage name was Bootsy Bellows.
Oh, okay.
And so Bootsy's is supposed to be a 1970s Art Deco club out of LA. So the next time we move, which is a year from now, we're going to aim to go more towards that genre of detail in the club.
So there's quite a bit of capital investment when you build out one of these
it's ridiculous.
Clubs. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
But ultimately, if you have the right formula, and it's always, this is the thing that I'm always amazed. Some clubs fail right and left, okay, and then others have a formula that just seems to resonate. And what do you think, how would you describe that to like a young 14-year-old kid who wants to own a nightclub, and he says, what's the secret?
I'm only as good as my team allows me to be.
It's really insightful.
You know, I understand, you know, when you have a restaurant or a club, the personality of the owner is mired into the place, and it kind of sets the tone. But it's literally the team of employees you have that make you successful, can make you or break you. It's about your pour costs, and it's about monitoring
Pour
everything.
costs. Explain what pour costs
You know,
are.
you have so many shots in a bottle, and you have your wholesale.
How many
obviously,
do we
your
have
retail.
in a bottle? What should it
Yeah,
be?
it depends what the bottle is. Generally, it's 18.
18 shots in a bottle.
Sure.
Okay.
Depending if it's you know, a liter or, you know, a 750 milliliter. But the bartenders, you know, can make you or break you. The bottle service girls can make you or break you, and you know, it's about being on point. But you know, it's about the pre-shift meetings with the staff. You know, in Aspen, because it's such a small town, everyone knows each other. So if someone's having a bad day, everyone's aware of it. Usually they're aware of the reasoning behind it or whatnot. So, you've got to make sure that the disposition of the employees, the team, as I always refer to us, is good, is stellar.
And it's always showtime. You can't come in if you're like grumpy or something. It's showtime when you're there. You've got to be.
Yeah.
I used to tell that to my doctors that worked
Sure.
with me. I don't care if you're tired or whatever. This patient has a problem. You have to be 100% perfect in every word you say every time. That's the same way. You're being judged and evaluated.
It's constant.
Each time.
It's constant. And it's not just the staff, but it's the music, the DJs. The DJs are a huge lead for us at night. I mean, you've got to build that crowd.
All right, so let's talk about the bartender. Like, okay, first of all, I got to admit something to you. I grew up in a family in Queens. Nobody drank. I didn't know anything about bars. When I walk in a bar, I'm totally uncomfortable in a bar. I don't know where you stand. I don't know what you do. I don't know how much you're supposed to tip. I don't know if you give the bartender this much. I don't know because I didn't grow up with it. But you obviously understand it. So explain what you look for in a bartender and how he can be a valuable accessory to your business model.
You always have to engage the customer. So the bartender, even if he's helping 3 people down there, he at least has to look over, he or she has to look over to the rest of the patrons standing there just to acknowledge them with some type of eye contact, which tells them.
So he's got to be a people person.
You have to be a people person. And some people are just slingers, meaning they're quick with the drinks.
Slingers, you call them?
Sure. You've got to have your slingers because you got to move volume. So some of the bartenders literally might be a little devoid of personality, but they're incredible. It's
Slingers.
incredible to watch them.
You know who was like, to me, and I haven't been in Bootsy, so I can't talk about your crew, but it's like Scotty from L'Osteria. If you ever watched him, I used to watch him work behind the bar. I think he's at Kenichi now. But he was like a surgeon moving back there.
Yeah.
I watched him. He was like me in the operating room, but he was doing drinks. I mean, every move was perfectly orchestrated. He was efficient. He knew what he was doing.
The way Scott Gibson could engage a crowd was bar none one of the best in town. And he still does that at Kenichi, just in a different capacity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the guy knew his business. So now, how many bartenders do you have on a given night?
3, a minimum of 3.
And you have vetted them through, how important is experience? A kid comes out of college, he wants bartended in his fraternity, he wants to work at Bootsy Bellows. Are you going to get a job?
He can practice. He can start. He's got to start low on the totem pole and work his way up. I mean, listen, I've been here for so long, so I go back with so many of these guys for 20 years. And a lot of the bartenders that we have here, you would recognize them from many other bars in the past. But a great example, one of our guys, Justin Gordon, nicknamed Jersey.
Jersey?
He didn't know anything
Is he
about
from
bartending.
Jersey?
He's from Jersey, and he didn't know anything about bartending. He just kept hounding my GM and I. And finally, I think we were stuck between a rock and a hard spot with no bartenders. I was like, Jersey, jump behind there. And we weren't, me and the GM, we were at a wedding in Hawaii. He jumped out there, didn't know squat about bartending. Somehow got through it. Even, and forget the bartending, just operating the POS system is hard enough.
But if you could get like a superstar bartender, okay, and then someone like me who doesn't know anything about it, you would know every single night there'd be a difference in revenues coming out of his pouring.
100%. I mean, we look at that every night and we compare and contrast.
So you actually
bartenders.
know about where the revenues are coming from.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I make this joke.
Is it computerized that if a bartender pours you a drink that goes on his, or?
You've got your comps, so if I'm buying drinks, if I buy 3 beers and 3 shots, it'll go under the POS. Andrew Sandler buys, 3 Bud Lights, 3 shots of Jack
You
Daniels.
meaning the customer.
Me, if I'm comping someone's tab or buying, Jerry
Okay.
Bovino a shot because you walk in and we high five each other, they put that in the POS. So that goes down on the computer system. And then all of their spend or comps,
It goes in there.
everything is logged. So at the end of the night or at the end of the month, we go through it all and see where we're on par for success or if we're going off the rails because we're giving too much away.
And here's an interesting thing. So I used to teach my doctors that the most important fertilizer is the shadow of the farmer. that you had to be there. That if you go out of the office and you say, call me if there's a problem, no. If there's a problem, you won't know there's a problem because you'll be off having lunch with the secretary. It's not going to be helpful. You got to be there. So how your business seems like it's like 50 times more important to be watching what happens.
My presence is greatly needed during the winter. A lot more when there's a lot more money in town, and a lot more of what we call the ballers are showing up to spend thousands of dollars.
Well, I'm learning a lot of stuff. You got the slingers, the ballers.
There's a whole book here.
Yeah, there is. Actually, there is.
Yeah.
But you learned all this on your own. Like no one ever taught you how to run a nightclub.
You know, the opportunity was there. I didn't know anything about it. I saw the opportunity. I knew, maybe 20% of what I know from Escobar, and it's literally just been through experience. But I've always been one of those people, as my dad used to say, Andrew, you'll jump off the cliff. Your brother will figure out how to get a parachute on you halfway down.
Right.
And that's literally what happened. And I just have a good team. My GM, Andy Papani, is extremely experienced.
How'd you find Andy?
I think we had opened, we were 3 months in, and the former manager brought him in. And what was great was Andy worked with me at Escobar. So when he showed up, it was bliss because he knows all the other things that I don't know. So I like to create the fantasy. I like to create the vision. He sits there in a room, we sketch everything, and then he fills in the details.
It's an inch. All right, so now we've got the bartender. He's working the crowd. You give him a little leeway to give out some free drinks once in a while.
You have to.
Is that acknowledged, or he doesn't have to sneak it behind your back? If he sees a guy buying a big bottle of something, whatever, he'll say, "Let me buy you one on the house on Andrew." Or that's acknowledged in your business model.
It's you have to give the bartenders autonomy to make their own decisions. You can't control adults like that, especially in this town, because we all know each other. So there's definitely people who come in where you're going to buy them some shots, and all of us go around town. We're all extended a certain amount of courtesy wherever we go.
Because in the other clubs, they know you, that you're in Bootsy Bellows. So if you're going to walk over to...
if you're going to go to Cas, Norm and Sammy are going to give you a shot. If you're going to go over to Caribou, Scotty and Toddy are going to give you a shot. Jordan's going to give you a shot over at Eric's, and then they're going to come over to Bootsy's. And, it's all out of family and love, just like most things in town.
So, okay, now the girls that do the bottle service.
Yes.
Bottle service, is that what you call it?
Sure. Table service, bottle service.
Table service. So the girls tell me how we picked them.
I'm trying to. So we started, and we actually started with a great team. I think the second year I drove down to Scottsdale to pluck a couple beautiful girls out of there. One of them's still with me, and it was just really building the team. But the girls, I think. Yeah, we have the girls we have some of the girls who've been with me for 5 years now, since day one. I don't think we've had anyone quit in 5 years.
And they're superstars, these girls, because they're...
They put up with a lot. They have to tolerate a lot. Everyone wants them to drink. Everyone wants me to drink. It's that part of the job gets hard.
That's an interesting thing, because they want to have a drink with you.
They always want to have a shot with the owner. And basically...
Are you a drinker? I mean, did you grow up knowing how to drink?
No. Just Jewish family.
Right, exactly.
Dad didn't have any whiskey or tequila
had a little
in the
Mogan
house.
David in the holidays. That was it.
His big line was, Andrew, Jews can't drink. Watch out.
But that's an interesting thing, because it's endemic in your industry that alcoholism and drug abuse can become part of the model.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is almost impossible to do the job sober without one drink, at least for me. I mean, you start going a little nuts when you're there. Because
and what do you drink? Like when you have a drink, is it usually something you would order?
I like to go to the gym a lot. I don't like to gain a lot of calories. I mean, whiskey is my favorite, but I try and stick with, now at 39, just some tequila shots.
Tequila shots just by themselves don't have a lot of calories?
No.
It's only when you put them in a margarita with all that sugar.
Sure, it's when you mix it with... the crap, the soda and whatnot, and or cranberry juice.
Yeah, that's
all
how
the
it's what
sugary
I like,
stuff.
because it's all sweet.
Yeah.
But when you are running the club, do you know is there a hot drink right now that people like? Like if I were cool, if someone ordered an old fashioned or something, which is probably coming back, but nobody would even know how to make it. But what drink would a hip young like 28-year-old hedge fund guy
Well,
order?
Good question. I think one of those guys, if they're at the bar, they would probably order a Manhattan. I mean, the
Really,
drinks
Manhattans are in, huh?
they still are in, but I mean, at a nightclub.
Did you hear about the new drink, the Hurricane Sandy? It's a watered-down Manhattan. It's terrible.
Terrible. I like it.
So they would order a Manhattan, huh?
Yeah, I think, you've got a couple different types of people. The ones who want a classic cocktail, a vodka soda.
Yeah.
A guy like me is more like a shot of Jack and a Bud Light. But it's always if it's table service, it's always champagne and tequila. So champagne.
Champagne's always good.
Yeah, Dom Perrier Jouet. If you're at the bar, the girls are always ordering sweet drinks. Gets them going, keeps them up.
So when this goes back years ago when you first opened Bootsy.
Yeah.
And you had these giant bottles of champagne, like, I don't know if they were
They,
like Magnums or Jeroboams or whatever. What were they?
It's a 15-liter Ace of Spades called a Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay, I had never heard of it, but you gave us a tour. You were very kind and very accommodating, and we walked through the club, and you said, I got to show you these bottles, and people were actually buying them over New Year's Eve. Remember that story?
And this goes with the name brand Bootsy's. So one of the LA Bootsy's largest bottle customers came in, oil and gas money, and came in and he bought the 15-liter Ace of Spades in Nebuchadnezzar. It was $150,000. I think he ended up spending $200,000. And
$150,000 for one bottle. What was a big bottle?
One bottle.
Was he buying it for like all his friends, or who was drinking it?
Again, it's just being seen with it. I mean, the busboy could barely lift it. We needed a wheelbarrow to get it out.
Yeah.
But
so a lot of that was just because he knew that. To speak candidly, the guy who could buy that was a successful man who. I mean, that's basically what it was.
I think he had the type of money where he couldn't spend the interest made on it in a year.
Right.
But,
And we have a lot of that in Aspen, to be
Sure, which is great. But that's what the brand did for us and for the town. So you got to remember, so this guy's at Bootsy spending $200,000. I think his total spend in a given 5 days that he was there was about $1.5 million.
And did he pay his bill?
Oh, he paid his bill. I mean,
weren't you a little bit apprehensive with someone like that they could be a deadbeat?
Clearly he had the name recognition, and my partners in LA were sending him to him.
They gave him.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a unique experience, and I mean, we still have the 15-liter, a new one, sitting in the cooler. So you buy this thing as a Honda Civic, and then you sell it for Range Rover pricing.
But you don't want to drop it, because that's a lot of profit.
Yeah, exactly. But you also don't want to be sitting on it. We've been sitting on this last one for, I think, 3 years.
So how do the table service girls promote that? Like, who would know that it's even there? Like, I wouldn't know.
Well, listen, there's a bottle menu, and when you look at it and you look at the prices, you kind of like, oh my God.
150,000. But sometimes I always maintain, which is my own internal joke, that if it were 225,000, you'd even sell more of them.
Trump always said, can't rent your apartment, raise the rent. And it's true. We've done that a few times with other things on the menu, and it sells like hotcakes.
And what's the essence of the business model of a nightclub? Explain. Do you serve food?
I intermittently serve food. When we were forced to become a restaurant, when we were in the lawsuit at the old building, without saying the people's names.
Because of the noise, we all remember that.
Sure. So we were a restaurant. Then we were doing items after that for late night, grilled cheese, French fries, burgers.
Yeah, because they want to get some kind of...
Absolutely.
The munchies are going and they got...
Yeah, but part of the business model too is lasting through the year during off season in Aspen.
Because you have a few months where you're going to make it.
Yeah, listen, from all of the money starts December 27th. I mean, that's when all of the heavy hitters get to Aspen. It's about December 27th, ends on January 2nd. Then
those 5 days are like...
Oh, they're
crazy.
You're not sleeping. You're dealing with
and your staff knows it.
Yeah, we all, and it's exciting. The craziness is exciting. I mean,
it's the equivalent of like Mother's Day or Valentine's Day in the flowers business. You're going to make it then, or you're not going to make it.
I mean, if you can't make it then, you are totally inept and should not be in the business. But, you know, listen, I think everyone remembers when Connor Kennedy got into a fight out front.
Tell us that story, because we all read about it in the newspaper, and any Kennedy story, of course. And the Kennedys have had a long history in Aspen. So tell us the story. Were you there that night?
I was there that night. So RFK Jr.'s son, so Bobby Kennedy's grandson, he was there. He was fine. It was when he got out of the club. I think some slur was hurled at a friend of his, and that escalated, and Connor finished the argument with his fist, if I recall. But I mean, that was one of those, again, publicity, and any publicity is good publicity.
You know, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
No.
I think that quote is attributed to P.T. Barnum when he said, like, it's all good publicity.
Yeah.
You know, as long as they're talking about you. But it was the front page on the papers for a few days.
Yeah, I mean, and anytime I can kind of twist things and make it appear good for us, I try, you know, even when there's negative things happening.
Did you know that he was in the club at that time? Did someone say he's a Kennedy, or did you not know?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
there's nothing that doesn't get past us. I mean, beyond that, before he even shows up with, you know, 80 brothers and sisters, you know, we get a text from certain powers that be going, you know, the Kennedys are coming in, or, you know, Kate Hudson's coming in, or, you know, whoever.
You'll know that beforehand.
Yes, yeah. And, you know, some of these people, you know, if there's celebrities, major celebrities, we'll bring them through the back door and kind of isolate them at a, you know, an elevated table.
Why would they want to go to such a public place unless they just feel like going out and having fun? A lot of these people want their privacy.
Yeah.
And suddenly you get a major celebrity who's coming in, and then it's like a fishbowl in there. People are going to look at them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the unique thing about Aspen is once you're here, I feel like you're part of this exclusive club to begin with. So, you know, you don't see too many Aspenites harassing celebrities.
We don't bother them.
They're just one of the people who are here.
Yeah.
So I think some want some attention, and most are happy that there is no attention.
It's an interesting dynamic, because I always joke, we all pretend, like, here's a confession, you want secrets? We all pretend, oh, the celebrities, we don't really notice them, we don't care about them. The truth is, we do care about them. We like being around celebrities. Yeah. Don't like, shoot any bull at me, because when people say, oh, this is Kevin Costner or Goldie Hawn or whatever, we like it.
It's fun.
Right? Yeah. But we don't bother them. That's the difference. We're respectful of their space. One time I remember years ago, I'm talking 30 years ago, Cher was in town, and the tourists were following her and tracking her like she was a grizzly on a hunt, you know. But the locals just were like trying to stay away from her and let her go shopping at Boogie's or wherever she was at the time.
Yeah, right.
But you know that. But the truth of it is, don't shoot baloney at us. We like the celebrities.
When I was a kid and Club Tattoo opened up, was that late 80s, you know, and you're watching Don Johnson and Don Henley and Melanie Griffith and Glenn Fry come in and out with those, you know, sexy red drapes that were there.
It was great. We liked it. Yeah.
Everyone liked it.
Okay, so now you got a nightclub going. Does that make you a cooler guy for dating in this town? Because you're a single guy. Be honest now. Don't lie to our viewers. To me, if I owned a nightclub that was as successful as Bootsy Bellows, that would make me sort of a little tiny rock star of sorts. Talk about that phenomenon, and more importantly, Andrew, I want you to talk about the downside of the restaurant business, the nightclub business, the employees, the personal relationships that get people in trouble in your industry.
Wow, where do we start here? Maybe we start with the negative.
Okay.
It's an extremely taxing business to be in, and there is, I think, something fascinating people find about the guy who is doing this, you know, the owner. People are always coming up to me, and I'm always humbled by it. I'm flattered by it. I try and treat everyone equally and give everyone the same amount of time when I'm talking to them. For me, a lot of time I'm kind of like, wow, I'm impressed that these people want to talk. I get Facebook messages. I get people who want to talk about businesses and see what I think. And I think a lot of that too is because of the things that I used to do before the whole nightclub thing.
So you actually have a background in business. You're not just some like crazy college guy who had a lot of good parties in college, so he opened things. You actually understand what a balance sheet looks like and where the profit comes from.
If you don't know your business and you don't know your numbers from your business, you don't have a business. The business will fail. And especially in a seasonal town like this, if you don't understand those pour costs and know how to read a balance sheet or a P&L, you're going to fail. And there's other facets to it as well. I mean, liquor prices go up, the wholesale pricing goes up. Andy and I like to invest in some of that liquor. So, we have 30-year Macallans, 40-year Macallans. We have over 10 bottles of Louis XIII. And we buy them, and then the pricing goes up, and we'll sit on them for a few years before we release it into, the crowd or on the menu.
What's interesting to me is a lot of the more upscale aged liquors like the 40-year Macallans, which are very expensive. But there's a demand for it because people in Aspen appreciate fine things, but more importantly, they're willing to pay for it. In most places, how many shots of 40-year Macallans are you gonna?
Absolutely. And it's funny, if you go to the Bootsies in LA, they don't have any of those types of products. They just move volume based on vodka, tequila, and whiskeys and certain gins. I look at it long term, and that's some of the stuff that helps us get through the off season too. So if we invest 20 grand into 10 bottles of Louis XIII, and then that price rises up to, and it's worth 20 grand, that extra 10 grand helps you get through the off seasons.
How do you control your inventory? I know I had a friend years ago when we lived in Ohio, and he was in the restaurant business, and he said it's an inventory business. He said, every day I'm going through counting the forks, the spoons, the steaks, looking at the liquor on the thing, marking down the bottles. There was before computers in those days. How well orchestrated is your personal control of the inventory?
So we do it bi-monthly. I think, restaurants like Hillstone, like White House, does it once a week.
Wow.
So it's extremely important to know that inventory. I mean, there's definitely times where, I'll walk in and steal 2 bottles of Grey Goose for the house.
Right.
So, that needs to be marked down.
It needs to be marked down.
All of that goes into the financials, all of it.
But if you're not paying attention, that stuff could be flying out the back door.
And we've had that happen.
Yeah.
We've had bottles go missing. Someone can't find the men's room. Walks back there, sees that the liquor closet is open, and grabs something and walks out the back.
Right. How are you going to know?
Yeah.
I mean, but you have to know when it disappears.
Yeah, I mean, you have to know all that. I mean, listen, we have over 35 staff, so we have security, we have the busboys, the cocktail waitresses, the bar manager, the GM, me. So, there's a lot of people on the floor, so it's tough to get things past us. But all of that is important. But I think going back to what you were asking about, the pros and cons of the nightclub, with the business being what it is, heavy music and heavy drinking, it's very taxing on you as a human being. I mean, I go to the gym a lot. It's the only thing that keeps my sanity and other little passions that I have.
It's like a hard workout every night.
It is. It is. And I started doing Bootsy's when I was 34. I'm 39 now. So
you're better at it. You learn with experience.
You learn. I mean, that is absolutely 100% true. And every year we do significantly better, and it's based on a criteria of things. But it's also why I just got 2 leases in town, and we're going to be doing a restaurant in the next year and a half. And I personally am trying to just transition half my time out of the nightclub and into a new project, just to maintain my sanity. Because it gets tough, your hearing starts going on you at the club.
You almost have to put the earplugs in. I noticed over at Michael Goldberg's place the other night, Belly Up, I had to put the earplugs because it's like you're going deaf in there.
Yeah, you are. You are. I was just having a conversation with one of my busboys about it. He was telling me he thinks he's got another 2 seasons left in him, as he's in his mid-40s, and the hearing goes. And so during off season, most of us get our hearing back.
Have you ever made the mistake of dating one of the girls that worked for you? Don't lie to us.
No, I think Listen, it's a small town. I think I dated some of them before I was in Bootsy's.
Yeah.
And
But you try to avoid it. Do you actually try to consciously avoid it, or can you succumb to that, like siren drawing you onto the rocks?
I mean, I'm human. I've made some screw ups.
Yeah.
You know, in the early days. What are you gonna do?
It's like, even though you knew, right?
I mean, listen. You know, you got a customer, a bottle client who's like, "Come drink with us." Before you know it, you're 3 sheets to the wind, and
Right.
you know it's closing, and an hour later, you have no idea where you could end up.
So you have 35 employees on any given night, especially a busy night.
I think any given night there could be anywhere from 8 to 20 sometimes.
But that's a lot. And I
yeah.
always used to say that if you have 8 employees, every single day you have 10 problems. Because employees are human beings.
Sure.
They're not.
No, their problems become your problems.
They do.
If they have a flat tire, you have a flat tire. But you know, again, we're all friends outside of the club. So you know, we do dinners. Some of us, I just went on vacation with a couple of them.
That's a good thing, right? Because you foster a camaraderie and
Absolutely.
like a family atmosphere.
I mean, you know, we're a team. These guys have no problem.
Do you
cursing
take
me out
them on
if I-
vacation? If you do you have
we took the whole
corporate
staff. Sure, we took a few years back. We took the whole staff to Scotland. Not the whole staff. I think I don't remember. I think some upper management people. There was like 5 of them. So we went to Scotland and went to all the distilleries, and that was an amazing trip. Extremely expensive. I don't think we've done that since because of the lawsuit, which cost a lot of money, and then the remodels.
Why were you being sued in that lawsuit? It seemed like
You know,
you don't own the space.
Listen, God bless everyone who was
Everybody
involved
gets
with
sued.
that, but
Yeah.
it was just a perfect storm of bad things coming together to make things worse. And so I think eventually, after they kept suing the owners of the building, hey, why not sue Andrew?
Right.
And they kept finding, you know,
The deep pocket, whoever's going to be the deep
yeah,
pocket.
and it almost bankrupted me. It was ridiculous how much we were spending. But you know, we had a great law firm, and we kept winning, and they kept finding new ways to sue us.
So now talk about live entertainment.
Sure.
You've had some well-known live entertainers. How important is that in the business?
Sure, this is part of my desire for Bootsy's to keep stepping up our game every year. So yeah, we've had Snoop Dogg, you know, T-Pain, Flo Rida,
How do you
Nelly.
get someone like that? I mean, they're big
Well,
name.
I mean, and this is okay. So this is part of also being part of Bootsy Bellows from L.A. and a list of other clubs and restaurants that my partners own out there. But so you know, we have promoters and we have agents who deal with a lot of these people's managers and staff. So we have access to everybody. So you can either go through the agencies, like a William
Like
Morris.
Snoop Dogg would have an agent.
Sure, but we didn't. I think with Snoop Dogg, we went right to his manager because we knew the people who could go right to the managers. You know, is that the correct way to do it? I'm not sure. There's different ways to do it. Usually, you're supposed to go through the agents. But we were able to get Snoop here, and Snoop and Nelly was for a private birthday that we did, and then this past year for the same gentleman.
And you pay them by the night? What's the business aspect of that?
That was I think hundreds of thousands of dollars for both Nelly and Snoop, and then you've got
Wow.
the private jet, and you've got suites at the Nell.
You have to babysit them to get
Absolutely.
them to come.
I mean,
And was it worth it? Was it a good investment?
Yeah, I mean, listen, just for the brand alone, we like to step it up. I mean, and not just that. I mean, we're not outfitted like Belly Up is. So, we do our sound checks, and then, there's a part of us that crosses our fingers and hopes to God nothing blows out. And,
Yeah.
But
You lose a few amplifiers.
yeah, I mean, yeah, you don't want to do that. I mean, anything, your heart's always racing in these situations, and the place is packed. But I think we had a few years back we had Eazy-E, not Eazy-E, G-Eazy. We had G-Eazy from that the Goldbergs had brought in for Belly Up, and they were completely sold out. And so they said, Andrew, would you like him to do a hosting gig at Bootsy's? And I think that was the first major act that we had. And what I saw was, I mean, this man, the crowd, he was feeding off of the energy. And I believe he was on the mic and he said something like, oh my God, who would have thought Aspen gets this lit?
Yeah.
So he was all over the bar. He was all over the tables. I mean, the audience was just in love with it. And that's when we said, all right, let's bring more of these people out. But it's about being able to break even with those artists and hope to make money and be cash flow positive with it. So when you bring out a T-Pain or a Bow Wow or we've even had some bands come out. So it's constantly a balancing
It's
act.
interesting to hear you talk about these like superstars, and then you say you got to be cash flow positive because you're a business person.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah.
you're just throwing money in
Well-
the toilet. I'm sure you could get Elton John to come in too, but you're not going to make any money paying him in a small club.
Yeah, and when we bring people in, there's a couple key locals in town. Well, I'll text them going, if I brought this guy in, how much would you pay? And we have our occupancy, and you can't go over that.
Right.
You're not supposed to go over that. So you're doing the math constantly to see if you're going to break even, and you're hoping to sell tables. So for Labor Day weekend, we've got DJ Ruckus and DJ Politic coming in, and then we have a band actually, and bands never really do well at nightclubs, and I'm taking a chance here. But we've got the
Why don't they do well? It's too chaotic, or
you see how Belly Up is situated. There's a stage, there's a lighting, there's and they are geared towards the demographics who want to see that on a certain night. So every night's different at Belly Up. Every night at Bootsy's, you're supposed to come in and expect top 40 lighting, table service. It's the same business model. So when you bring in a band, like we've got to start advertising it now to make sure we can at least get 100 people in there. But this is a major band, the Tim Montana band out of Tennessee, one of Kid Rock's writing partners, which is what really piqued my interest to bring them out.
so you have to be up on what's cool. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
you know what's cool right now. What about DJs? I'm always curious. DJs used to be like a pedestrian kind of job where they'd come in and they'd play a record. Now they're going like this and they're superstars. Talk about the DJ phenomena.
Yeah, you've got to have personality when you're a DJ. You've got to have some takeaways, as I call them, that you're known for certain things. It could be a certain song that you play in the middle of the night. It could be a certain time where you start piquing the audience. But, you're telling a story. And you're taking that the patrons in the club, including me, because I'm watching and always judging and always hammering these guys.
You're watching a DJ, like you know what a good one looks like versus.
Listen, I've been known for pulling some DJs, out of Bootsy's in the middle of their
And what
gig.
makes them good? They just have the pace right, and
Yeah.
they know when to bring it up and bring it down. And
Sure. I mean, listen, it's not DJing isn't easy, and then learning the mixers and the technology behind it. All of it. It's all part of it. How you're spinning the decks. What song you have on deck that's going to mesh well with the previous song, or if you decide to there's terms like dumping the dance floor and
what does that mean? What is dumping?
You could be playing. If you're playing a hit song and then you roll that hit song, like a top 40 song in 2018, and then all of a sudden you go to a Bon Jovi song from the 1980s, some of that is piquing people's interest and making people real happy and jumping up and dancing. And when people do that and their adrenaline spikes, that's usually when you dump the dance floor to go get them to drink something.
That's interesting. But what's interesting to me, there are some songs that it's impossible not to have a good time
Sure.
and dance to.
Yeah.
And the Journey song, Don't Stop Believing. You cannot not dance to that.
No, and everyone knows the words, or
And everyone knows
Neil
the
Diamond.
words. Right. But what are the other songs like that you can think of that people are going to jump up and be dancing, having a great time, telling their friends when they walk out, that place is amazing?
I mean, The Outfield, Your Love, is a classic 80s song. Different Led Zeppelin songs. I mean, there's always that one or two songs that every DJ plays that everyone knows in every bar.
And they're waiting for it.
They're waiting for it, and then it's tough to follow up with something after that. Michael Nakagawa, DJ Nakaji's got these staple songs that these remixes, but it's the way that he plays them at a certain time, and him and I give each other eye contact. He knows exactly what I'm thinking. He takes the lead on it, but he plays "Money for Nothing" by Dire Straits, and that amazing guitar riff, right after the drums are going off. And then, a Nirvana song from the Nevermind album, or Sabotage from Beastie Boys. Key songs with the right harmonies, the
Beastie
right riffs.
Boys people like it. Gets them going. Yeah.
Absolutely. Or, there's so many, but, you hope any DJ plays a few of these. And then there's the specific DJs that you're bringing in that you're paying 10 or 20 grand to, who are light years ahead of so many other DJs that are playing. Not only do the energy of the room is already there as soon as they get up on stage to play. They have a certain aura, a certain persona that has made them successful.
Yeah, and
those people. I mean, there's a basic psychology to this, and when you watch them, you're just in awe of how they do it.
Do you hire different DJs, or do you have one that's like the normal
Sure,
DJ?
we have our standard DJs weekly, and then depending what the dates are, Labor Day weekend, July 4th, New Year's, X Games is when we spend major money to bring in major people.
And do these DJs, do they have a name brand? Like, they're DJs that if someone said, that's John
Yeah,
Quinn,
absolutely.
everybody, oh, John Quinn's coming, he's going to spin records.
Absolutely. I mean, and what's been fascinating to watch in the last 5 years, a couple of these DJs have gone from us. One of them, DJ Hex, he's gone from us to playing a major nightclub in San Diego, which was Omnia, to playing Bootsy's LA. And it's the driven DJs that want to expand their horizons and get their name out there that go a lot further than some of the guys who just want to play locally. I mean, what's really great is to see the DJs who have gone from Aspen to the Olympics like Naka G and to X Games.
So you have a phenomenally successful business model here. You know the DJ business. You know the bottle service girl business. You know the bartender business. But you still, and I admire this, you still want to go into bigger and better things. So tell us what's in the plans.
I just never want to be a one-trick pony. And even though I have other businesses that most people don't know me for. Like even when I sold the telecom company, I restarted it and spent a year growing it with a sales team. But I'm throwing my hat in the ring to do a restaurant, and that restaurant is also in LA.
Here in Aspen?
Sure, yeah. I spent a long time negotiating for the leases at Gray Lady and Bodega. And those two buildings are going to come down eventually, and we're going to build one big building. Mark Hunt's taking the lead on that. But the restaurant is based out of LA, like Bootsy's. It's called The Nice Guy. It's a
Nice Guy. So it has a brand name already.
Got a brand name already. And I remember my partners opened it the day they opened it. I think it was 3.5 years ago. I said to them, "Oh, we're doing this in Aspen. We've got to do this in Aspen." It's a 1950s Rat Pack throwback to the Sinatra era.
Oh, I think that's going to be a fun thing.
Yeah. I mean, you literally feel like you're stepping back in time. And, I think a lot of the Aspen locals who have been here from the 70s, who are constantly talking about the 70s and, the nostalgic times past, if you will, and how great they were. I think this is really going to be a very cool
It'll
endeavor.
be a cool thing. Well,
Yeah.
I have like a list of 500 questions here. I think I've asked 2 because Andrew's such a good, compelling, engaging guest. So I really want to thank you for coming on the show, Andrew.
Thank you.
If you see Andrew in town, please go over and say hello to him. Read his mother's column, Opinionated But Right.
Opinionated But
Elaine
Right.
Sandler. I want to thank Cindy, the Hermes girl on Madison Avenue in New York, for researching a crocodile Hermes pocketbook for me. And if anybody needs an Hermes Birkin or a Kelly or something, ask for Cindy at the Madison Avenue store. She knows her stuff. So we will see you in town, and thanks for your generosity on sharing nightclub secrets. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jerry.
That was fun.
That was fun.